All right, let's dive into Think Like a Monk.
Sounds good.
It seems like from the excerpts you picked out, you're really into figuring out how to actually use these monk principles
Mm-hmm.
in your everyday life. So we're going to kind of explore those together and hopefully find some cool insights
Yeah,
about finding some calm in all the chaos
right.
and maybe even figuring out like your own personal dharma.
It's interesting because when you look at the parts you highlighted,
Yeah.
there's this real focus on like questioning what success even means, how to
Right.
let go of things that aren't good for you and even how to deal with that, like monkey mind
Yes.
that never shuts up.
Okay, so first, let's get into Shetty's personal story a little bit. So he left, a career in finance to become a monk,
Right.
which I imagine like came with a lot of pressure from his family and friends.
Oh, yeah.
In the book, he talks about how their definition of success was really traditional
For sure.
and externally focused.
Yeah, it's fascinating how much those external pressures like really shape our own values. We might start going after goals that we think we should want
Right.
instead of like the things that really click with us. Shetty even uses this term spot, stop, swap to like describe how to break those bad patterns, and make better habits.
Yeah.
So first you spot the bad thought or, the action.
Okay.
Then you stop yourself from doing it.
Uh-huh.
And then you swap it for something better.
I love
It
that.
could be a good way to like look at our own ideas of success and like where those ideas even came from.
Yeah. So have you ever felt that pressure
Oh, yeah.
to follow like a certain path, even if it didn't like totally align with
Oh,
what
right.
you were passionate about?
All the time.
What if instead of like wasting your life, as Shetty was told,
Right.
you could like redefine what success means
Absolutely.
for you personally?
And that leads perfectly into Shetty's idea of like letting go.
Okay.
He uses this great metaphor about a dusty mirror
Okay.
where all that stuff, the possessions, the needing validation,
Right.
even our like negative thoughts, it's all like dust, covering up our true selves. He really felt this like firsthand when he gave up almost everything
Well,
to live in an ashram.
it makes me think about like how we're just bombarded with
Like,
all
yes.
these images and messages on social media, constantly comparing ourselves
Constantly.
to other people. It's
Yeah.
so easy to like feel weighed down by all that.
For sure.
What are your thoughts on how all that dust, so to speak,
It's a great point.
is affecting people today?
Shetty would probably say all that outside noise
Yeah.
makes it even harder to like hear our own inner voice,
Right.
and figure out what truly matters. It's like we need to wipe that mirror clean
Yeah.
so we can see ourselves clearly.
Yeah.
So let's talk about another thing that can really like cloud our judgment.
Right.
Fear.
Fear.
So Shetty actually discovered a hidden fear of his own through meditation.
Interesting.
He said it seems small at first,
Yeah.
but it turned out to be connected to this like much deeper insecurity. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
Where like small anxiety
Right.
was like pointing towards something bigger
Yeah.
going on beneath the surface.
It happens all the time, actually. Sometimes those little fears are like
Well-
warning signs trying to get our attention, Shetty also talks about how important it is to face those fears head on.
Right.
He uses this really interesting analogy about trees
Yes.
in Biosphere 2.
Biosphere 2 was that experiment
Right.
where scientists created like a closed, controlled ecosystem.
Yeah.
And the trees inside started to collapse.
Wow.
Because they were like shielded from the wind.
Interesting. And it turns out that facing resistance, like even something as simple as wind,
Right.
is essential for like developing strength.
Exactly. It's easy to like apply that to our own lives, right? Like
Truly.
we try to make these, quote, safe and controlled environments for ourselves.
Yeah.
But just like those trees, we could be missing out on chances to grow because we're avoiding those necessary challenges.
So that brings us to Shetty's concept of dharma, which he defines as like our unique purpose.
Right.
And he says it's about like identifying our skills
Yeah.
and passions and aligning our actions with them.
For sure.
But it's not always like a straight path. He talks about how he had to experiment
Right.
and try different things
Of course.
before he like found his passion for teaching,
Yeah.
even while he was, working a finance job.
That's so important, though,
Yeah.
because it shows that finding your dharma is a process.
Yes.
He even gives us like a framework
Yeah.
in the book based on this ancient Indian idea of varnas.
Okay.
There are 4 varnas:
Mm-hmm.
guides, leaders, creators, and makers.
Now, before we like go any further,
Yeah.
could you like break down those varnas a
Yeah.
little bit more? I think it'd be really helpful for our listener
Absolutely.
to understand how these categories could apply to their own life.
So guides are the people who like naturally love sharing knowledge and helping others, find their way.
Okay.
Leaders are the ones who inspire and motivate people. They often like take charge and, create structure.
Okay.
Creators are the innovators, the visionaries.
Right.
Always pushing boundaries with new ideas. And then the makers are the ones who like take those ideas and like make them real,
Okay.
in a practical way.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And is the idea that everyone like fits neatly
No.
into one specific varna?
It's definitely not about fitting into a box.
Okay.
Most people have a mix of these qualities.
Right.
And recognizing our strengths in each area can help us like understand our natural tendencies.
Okay.
And find fulfillment in whatever we do.
Shetty also talks about this monkey mind,
Yes.
that we all deal with. It's like the constant chatter of thoughts that can make it like hard to focus
Totally.
or find peace. He's really open about his own like struggles with meditation, even as a monk.
Right.
He describes his thoughts as like a monkey jumping from branch to branch,
Yes. Love it.
never settling down.
It's such a like relatable image
Yeah.
for so many people. He actually uses another analogy too
Right.
to explain how to like tame that monkey mind.
Yeah.
The charioteer. So the charioteer represents our conscious mind,
Uh-huh.
and the horses are like our thoughts and emotions.
Yeah.
And if the charioteer isn't in control, those horses are just going to run wild.
It's a powerful image.
Right.
So the idea is that like through practices like meditation and mindfulness,
Exactly.
we can become better charioteers
Right.
and gain control over our thoughts.
Exactly. And he makes it clear it's a practice.
Yeah.
Not like a perfect destination.
Right.
You're not going to like completely silence your mind.
Right.
But you can learn to like observe your thoughts without getting swept away by them.
Have you found that certain techniques
Oh, yeah.
or practices are particularly helpful
Yeah.
for like taming that monkey mind?
Shetty gives a lot of different techniques. But one of the easiest and best is like focusing on your breath.
Okay.
It's like an anchor,
Yeah.
You can always come back to it
Right.
when your mind starts to wander.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to relationships,
Okay.
which are like obviously crucial for monks
Yes.
and everyone else.
Yeah.
Shetty did this really interesting point about how we often like misinterpret
Yeah.
what attracts us to other people.
He talks about how we might be drawn to like someone's looks
Right.
or their success or
Yeah.
their intelligence at first.
Yeah.
But those things alone
Yeah.
don't necessarily make a strong, lasting connection.
So it's not just about superficial qualities. He actually breaks down attraction into 5 categories.
Okay.
Physical, material, intellectual,
Okay.
emotional,
Yeah.
and spiritual.
Right.
And the strongest relationships are the ones built on a combination of all 5.
It's a really useful framework
Yeah.
for like looking at our own relationships and understanding what's really important to us.
Totally.
He even shares this like pretty surprising statistic about trust.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, people lie
Oh, wow.
in about 1/5 of their daily interaction.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a lot higher
it is, right?
than I would have guessed.
Yeah,
No wonder trust is such a big issue in relationships.
absolutely. And then he goes on to describe these 4 stages of trust: neutral,
Okay.
contractual, mutual,
Okay.
and pure.
Okay.
He emphasizes that we sometimes trust people too quickly,
Yeah.
without enough evidence.
That makes me think about how, like, we form trust differently with different people.
Totally.
Do you think there are, like, certain qualities?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Or behaviors
Yeah.
that like tend to build trust.
Shetty would probably point to things like honesty,
Okay.
consistency,
Okay.
and reliability as key factors in building trust.
Okay.
He also uses the analogy of redwood trees
I remember that.
to show how strong relationships can provide, like, support and resilience.
Yeah, he describes how redwood trees have like shallow roots,
Right?
but they like intertwine with each other to create a network
Exactly.
that helps them like withstand storms.
Yeah, it's such a powerful image.
Of how supportive relationships can help us get through life's challenges, And it raises a question for you.
Yeah.
Who are those people in your life that you can truly rely on?
Right.
The ones who are like those intertwined redwood roots.
Yeah.
And what can you do to nurture those connections?
That's a great question to reflect on.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this would be a good place to pause and let our listener, digest everything.
Yeah, we have covered so far.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yes, there is.
When we come back, we'll dive into some more practical tips and exercises from Shetty's book.
Awesome.
All right, so great. All right, welcome back. We were just talking about those supportive relationships, like those intertwined roots of redwood trees.
Yeah.
Now, like building on that, I'd love to explore more about how we can actually cultivate those strong connections. So Shetty emphasizes this idea of like presence as a like key ingredient for showing love. It's not just about, spending time with someone, but really giving them like your full attention when you're together.
He makes a great point when he says he'd rather spend like 2 focused, engaged hours with family than like a whole weekend where he's only half there,
Yeah.
It's about quality over quantity.
Yeah, totally.
Like really being present in those moments instead of letting your mind like drift off to other things.
It makes you think about how often we're like physically with someone, but mentally somewhere else entirely.
Totally.
Like our phones or to-do lists, even just like the busyness of life can make it really hard to like truly be present.
It really can.
With those we care about.
And that's where like those monk-like practices we were talking about earlier can be super helpful.
Yeah.
Like mindfulness and meditation can help us train our minds to be more present. Not just in our relationships, but like in all parts of life.
So how can we like practically apply those practices to our relationships? Shetty talks about these 6 loving exchanges that can strengthen connections.
Yes.
Can you walk us through those a bit?
Absolutely. These exchanges are all about like fostering generosity, gratitude, and a spirit of service within a relationship. So the first one is about giving and receiving gifts.
Okay.
Now, he's not talking about like material stuff here.
Right.
It's more about those thoughtful gestures, that show you really care.
I can see how something as simple as like remembering a friend's favorite book.
Exactly.
Or, offering a helping hand when someone's feeling overwhelmed could fall into that category.
Totally. It's those little things that often mean the most.
Exactly. Okay, what's the second exchange?
The second one is all about sharing food.
Okay.
And this goes beyond just like physically nourishing someone.
Right.
It's about creating a sense of connection and togetherness.
He actually links it back to the tradition of like offering food to monks and receiving blessings in return.
Yeah.
Which creates this like beautiful cycle of giving and receiving.
I love that. Sharing a meal can definitely be like a very daunting experience.
For sure.
Okay, what's the third exchange?
The third one is all about sharing knowledge.
Okay.
It's about being open to like learning from each other, supporting each other's growth, and having those meaningful conversations that really let you connect on a deeper level.
It's so interesting to think about how like those conversations where you're like truly listening and learning from each other can be just as nourishing as like sharing a meal.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the fourth exchange, which is focused on offering praise and like appreciating each other's qualities. It's about expressing gratitude for the things we love and admire about the other person.
Acknowledging their strengths and their contributions.
It's so easy to like focus on the negatives or get so caught up in our own lives that we like forget to express our appreciation for the people around us.
It's true.
This exchange is a great reminder to like celebrate each other.
Exactly. The fifth exchange is about giving and receiving service.
Okay.
It's about like showing up for each other in like tangible ways. Offering practical help and support. Especially during those tough times when someone's struggling.
It makes me think about how much like comfort and strength we can get from knowing that someone has our back, that they're there for us when we need them.
Exactly. And the sixth and final exchange is all about like sharing your heart.
Okay.
Sharing your inner world,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's about being vulnerable, communicating authentically,
Right.
and creating that, like, safe space for emotional intimacy.
This one feels like particularly important, especially in a world where it's like often easier to, hide behind a mask or put on a brave face.
It can definitely be hard to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
but it's also so important for building those, like, deep, meaningful connections. These 6 exchanges offer a roadmap, for shifting from a more transactional mindset to a more generous and, like, heart-centered way of relating to the people in our lives.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about the ego.
Right.
So Shetty describes the ego as this, like, mask that we create, to protect ourselves from feeling insecure or inadequate.
Yeah.
But he says that this mask can actually prevent us from connecting authentically with others and, like, hinder our own growth.
He makes a great point when he says, like, the biggest obstacle to learning is being a know-it-all.
Right.
When we're too focused on, like, proving ourselves or protecting our image, we close ourselves off to, like, new information and experiences.
It's that fear of, like, appearing incompetent or vulnerable that can hold us back. Shetty also talks about, like, the dangers of the institutional ego.
Yes.
Where, like, organizations become so set in their ways that they fail to, like, adapt to change.
He uses the example of, like, Blockbuster turning down the chance to buy Netflix.
Oh, wow.
They were so attached to, like, their old business model that they couldn't see the potential of this new technology. And because of that, they went bankrupt.
Wow.
While Netflix, like, became a global empire.
It's a pretty dramatic example of how, like, clinging to the past can lead to our downfall.
Yeah.
So if recognizing the ego is, like, the first step, how do we actually tame it?
Shetty suggests a few things, like practicing humility, being open to feedback, and celebrating other people's success. It's about, like, shifting our focus from self-promotion to genuine connection and contribution.
It sounds like it's about, like, recognizing that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And that, like, our individual success is, like, intertwined with the well-being of others.
He even recommends doing, like, menial tasks like washing dishes or cleaning toilets as a way to, like, cultivate humility and detach from our sense of self-importance. It's a reminder that we're all human, regardless of our accomplishments or status.
Okay, so now let's talk about service, which is, like, a core principle of the monk's way of life.
For sure.
So Shetty talks about how during his monk training, he and his fellow monks were sent out into the world with no money or possessions.
It was such a powerful experience in, like, detachment and service.
Yeah.
They had to rely on the kindness of others to survive. And in the process, they, like, discovered the joy and fulfillment that comes from helping those in need.
It's a good reminder that, like, service doesn't have to be some grand gesture.
Right.
It can be as simple as, offering a helping hand to a neighbor.
Totally.
Or, like, volunteering our time at a local charity.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And Shetty emphasizes that we don't have to wait for some, like, extraordinary opportunity to serve.
Right.
There are tons of ways to, like, incorporate service into our everyday lives, often in those, like, small, unassuming acts of kindness that can really make a difference in someone's day.
He also makes the point that people with less money often tend to be more generous.
Yeah.
Which, like, challenges our assumptions about wealth and generosity.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a connection between, like, having less?
It's an interesting observation.
Yeah.
And being more willing to share. There's actually research that backs that up.
Oh.
Studies have shown that people who are lower in socioeconomic status are often more empathetic and more likely to help others who are in need.
It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
Shetty also encourages us to, like, find ways to serve within our own dharma,
Yeah.
Using our unique skills and passions to, like, make a positive impact on the world.
Right.
It's about finding that, like, sweet spot where, like, our talents and the needs of the world, like, intersect.
He even provides, like, a list of practical ways to incorporate service into your daily life. Like helping an elderly neighbor with groceries, mentoring a young person, or donating to a cause you care about.
It's great that he, like, provides those specific examples because it makes it, like, feel more accessible and attainable.
Now, building on this idea of service, Shetty brings up this fascinating concept of visualizing our goals and intentions.
Okay, tell me more about that. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Like, what role does visualization play in, like, thinking like a monk?
He explains how monks use visualization techniques, like during meditation,
Okay.
for all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
Healing past hurts,
Mm-hmm.
preparing for the future, even manifesting their desires.
Wow.
It's a really powerful tool for like shaping our reality.
So it's about like creating a clear mental picture
Yes.
of what you want to achieve or
Yeah.
experience,
Right.
and then focusing your energy and
Yeah.
attention on that image.
Exactly. And by like repeatedly doing that visualization, you're basically training your mind to like make it real.
Wow.
It's like planting a seed in your subconscious
Mm-hmm.
and like nurturing it with focused intention.
That sounds amazing.
Mhm.
But I gotta admit, I'm not very good at meditation.
Oh, yeah.
Like, my mind just tends to wander
Yeah.
all over the place. Do you have any advice for those of us who, like, struggle?
It's a common struggle.
Yeah.
Even Shetty talks about his own challenges with meditation, even as a monk.
Right.
Remember, it's a practice,
Yeah.
not a performance.
Okay.
The key is to be patient with yourself
Mm-hmm.
and just notice when your mind wanders without judgment.
Okay.
Then just gently guide your attention back to your breath
Right.
or
Yeah.
your chosen point of focus.
So it's about, like, recognizing those wandering thoughts,
Right.
but not getting, like, caught up in them.
Exactly.
Just observing them and letting them, like, pass by
Yeah.
like clouds.
Exactly. And Shetty offers some practical tips
Okay.
for like establishing a regular meditation practice.
Okay.
You know, finding a quiet space, focusing on your breath,
Mm-hmm.
and even starting with just a few minutes each day can make a big difference.
So consistency is key, right?
Yeah.
Just, like, building that meditation muscle
Yeah,
over time.
absolutely. It's like any skill.
Right.
The more you practice, the easier it gets.
Okay, before we move on to, like, the final part of our deep dive, let's
Okay.
just take a second to recap some of the, like, key takeaways.
All right. We've covered a lot of ground, from the importance of like questioning our ideas of success
Mm-hmm.
to the power of letting go and like taming that monkey mind
Yes.
that's always going.
Right.
We've also like really dug into the importance of cultivating meaningful relationships,
Yeah.
embracing the principle of service,
Mhm.
and even like tapping into the power of visualization.
It's been a lot.
Yeah, and through it all, we've seen how even small, consistent efforts to like bring these monk-like principles into our lives
Right.
can lead to like profound changes
Mhm.
in how we experience the world.
I'm really excited to explore some more practical exercises and
Yeah.
techniques in the final part of our deep dive.
Right.
It's great to have all this, like, theoretical knowledge,
Right.
but I'm, like, eager to see how we can actually put these principles into action in our daily lives. Welcome back. So I'm ready to jump into those practical exercises we were talking about before the break. I'm, like, really interested in
Yeah.
how we can actually incorporate these, you know, monk-like practices into our, like, busy modern lives.
One of the things Shetty really emphasizes is how important it is
Okay.
to start each day with intention.
Okay.
So instead of like letting outside forces control your mood,
Right.
you like consciously choose how you want to show up in the world.
Like taking control of, like, the narrative of your day
Perfect.
rather than just, like, reacting to
Yeah.
whatever comes your way.
He talks about how in the ashram, they would wake up an hour earlier than they needed to,
Wow.
just to create space for things like meditation, reflection,
Yeah.
and setting intentions for the day.
That sounds like a really powerful way to start the day.
Yeah.
But, like, an extra hour might feel a little daunting
Right.
for those of us who are used to, you know, hitting the snooze button.
He actually addresses that. He says you don't need a full hour,
Okay.
even just 10 or 15 minutes
Oh.
of like dedicated me time before the craziness of the day
Mm-hmm.
can make a huge difference.
So it's about finding those, like, pockets of time, even if they're small,
Right.
to prioritize those inner practices.
He calls it the time routine: thankfulness, insight, meditation, and exercise.
Okay. I like that.
And he gives like specific exercises for each of those elements.
Yeah.
For example, he suggests starting your day by writing down 3 things you're grateful for.
Okay.
It's a simple practice, but it can really like shift your perspective.
It's like priming your mind to,
Right.
like, focus on the positive
Exactly.
rather than dwelling on the negative.
Yeah.
What about the insight part?
Oh, yeah. He suggests using that time for journaling or reflection.
Okay.
Asking yourself questions like, what am I looking forward to today? Or what challenges might I face and how can I best prepare for them? It's about like taking a few moments to connect with yourself.
Right.
And gain clarity
Yeah.
before the day takes off.
I like that. It's almost like having a mini strategy session with yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, so after thankfulness and insight,
Yeah.
we'll move on to meditation.
Right.
Now, Shetty talks a lot about different meditation techniques. Does he recommend any specific practices for beginners?
One of the simplest and most effective techniques he suggests is focusing on your breath.
Okay.
Just noticing the rise and fall of your chest as
Yeah.
you breathe in and out.
It sounds almost too simple.
It is simple, but that's part of the beauty of it.
Right.
And it's surprisingly powerful.
Okay.
He also emphasizes that it's okay if your mind wanders.
Yeah.
The goal isn't to silence your thoughts completely,
Right.
but to gently guide your attention back to your breath
Okay.
whenever it drifts away.
So it's like building a muscle, strengthening that ability to focus
Exactly.
and redirect your attention.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the exercise?
Oh, yeah. He emphasizes that movement is essential
Okay.
for both physical and mental well-being.
Mhm.
He's not talking about intense workouts here,
Right.
but even just a few minutes of gentle stretching or going for a walk can energize your body and clear your mind.
It's about incorporating movement into your day.
Right.
In a way that feels good for you.
Exactly. And he also talks about having a dedicated evening routine to prepare you for restful sleep.
I can definitely see how that would be helpful, especially in our always connected world.
For sure. Yeah.
It's hard to wind down
It is.
when you're constantly being bombarded
Right.
with information and stimulation.
He suggests things like disconnecting from technology,
Okay.
at least an hour before bed,
Okay.
dimming the lights, reading a book,
Right.
or taking a relaxing bath.
He also mentions avoiding looking at your phone first thing in the morning, which is something I'm definitely guilty of.
He compares it to letting 100 people into your bedroom
Wow.
before you've even had a chance to wake up properly.
Right.
Talk about information overload.
Yeah.
It's about creating that buffer
Right.
between your inner world and the outside world, giving yourself some time and space to transition into your day.
I love that analogy. Okay, so shifting gears a bit, Shetty also talks about this concept of spot, stop, swap,
Yeah.
which is basically a 3-step process for breaking negative patterns and cultivating more positive habits.
It's a great technique for becoming more aware of those automatic thoughts and behaviors that often run on autopilot.
Right.
So the first step is to spot the negative pattern. This
Right.
could be anything from negative self-talk to procrastination
Right.
to mindless snacking.
So it's about paying attention to those habits,
Which that-
both mental and behavioral,
Yeah.
that aren't serving you.
The next step is to stop yourself
Okay.
from engaging in that pattern.
Okay.
This might involve simply saying no to yourself
Right.
or creating some distance from the trigger.
So for example, if you notice yourself scrolling through social media
Yeah.
and feeling envious of other people's posts,
Right.
you could consciously choose to, put your phone down or redirect your attention
Exactly.
to something more positive.
And the final step is to swap the negative pattern
Okay.
with a more positive alternative.
Okay.
This could be anything from practicing gratitude
Mm-hmm.
to engaging in a hobby you enjoy
Right.
to spending time with loved ones.
It's about replacing those unhelpful habits
Exactly.
with actions that nourish your mind, body, and spirit.
And Shetty gives a ton of practical examples and exercises for putting this technique into practice in all areas of your life.
That's awesome.
He also talks about the importance of finding your spot.
Now, I thought spot was part of the spot, stop, swap technique.
Oh, he uses it differently here.
Okay.
In this context, he's talking about creating a physical space in your home
Okay.
that's dedicated to peace and reflection.
Oh, okay. Like a meditation corner.
Exactly.
Or a quiet reading nook.
It doesn't have to be fancy or anything.
Right.
It could just be a comfortable chair with a soft blanket.
Okay.
The key is that it's a space where you can go.
Yeah.
to disconnect from the outside world
Right.
and reconnect with yourself.
That makes a lot of sense. Creating like a physical space
Right.
that supports your like inner practices.
And that brings us to another important point, single tasking.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this idea of like single tasking.
Shetty points out how most of us are terrible at multitasking.
Right.
It's actually more like task switching.
Oh.
And it's super inefficient.
Mm-hmm.
It like lowers our productivity,
Right.
increases our stress, and prevents us from like fully engaging
Right.
in the task at hand.
I know. I'm like definitely guilty
Yeah.
of trying to do too many things at once.
It feels like our culture like glorifies busyness
Yeah.
and productivity,
Mm-hmm.
but it often comes at the cost of our well-being.
You're right.
Shetty encourages us to like embrace the power of single tasking,
Okay.
focusing all our attention and energy on one thing at a time.
Okay.
He even suggests like using a timer
Okay.
to help us stay focused and avoid distractions.
It's like giving ourselves permission
Right.
to like slow down
Yeah.
and really immerse ourselves in the
Yeah.
present moment.
And when it comes to work, he encourages us to like find ways to align our actions
Okay.
with our dharma,
Yeah.
our unique purpose.
So it's not just about being like productive,
Right.
but about being purposeful.
Exactly. And he also emphasizes the importance of like detaching from the outcome.
Okay.
It's about doing our best, putting in the effort,
Yeah.
and then letting go of the need to like control the results.
It's about like surrendering to the process,
Right.
trusting that things will unfold as they're meant to.
And remembering that like we don't always get what we want,
Right.
but we can always choose how we respond to those challenges.
Mm-hmm.
We can either like get caught up in disappointment and frustration,
Yeah.
or we can see it as an opportunity for like growth and learning.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's like the key takeaway?
Yeah, I think the most important message is that even small, consistent efforts
Mm-hmm.
to incorporate these monk-like principles into our lives
Right.
can create this ripple effect
Yeah.
of positive change.
It's about finding those practices that resonate with you
Yeah,
and then committing to them,
exactly.
even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
And remembering that it's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
There will be times when you fall off track, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Just gently guide yourself back to the path.
It's like Shetty says, the world isn't with you or against you. You create your own reality in every moment.
That's a good one.
So the question is,
Yeah.
how will you choose to create your reality?
What small step can you take today to bring more peace, purpose, and presence into your life?
That's it for our deep dive into Think Like a Monk. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep diving deep.
Did you get any of that?